Welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show, a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today's special guest is Jason Vanzin. Jason is the founder and CEO of Right Hand Technology Group, an award-winning IT and cybersecurity provider helping SMBs protect their business. He is also an entrepreneur, a real estate investor, and an AI strategist, which is going to be a fun conversation for me. Maybe most impressively, he's been married for 20 years to the same woman and has two children. So, do love a good blend of family and business. Jason, excited to have you on. How goes it over there in Pittsburgh?
It's going good. It's nice and warm today. I appreciate you having me on. I think it's actually gonna be 77 today, so I'm like chomping at the bit to get out of here. Go have a cigar.
I'm actually having a cigar later today too.
Nice.
I'm talking to another marketing agency owner who wants to transition his company with using AI
Cool.
and a lot more fun over cigar.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Jason, my first question is, you got a lot going on, balancing business and family. What was life like before family and before entrepreneurship? Was there a time that you can remember that you weren't an entrepreneur, or did you fall into it later on in life?
Well, I don't know if I'm sure you've heard the Steve Jobs quote where he talks about connecting the dots backwards.
Mm,
Um, I didn't realize it till, probably in my 30s looking back, but pretty much always been that way. I mean, a buddy and I used to just run around the neighborhoods with his lawnmower, pounding on doors to find people to cut their grass at like I think we were like 11. Same thing in the winter. Caddied at 13. You know, just always hustling. I guess I kind of grew up with without a lot of money, so just hustled, and kind of always dabbled in like wanting to have my own business, even when I was working for, Computer Associates when I started and UPS. Actually, UPS was my first job, running a couple of their data centers.
hmm.
And well, I mean, a couple of their centers, not their data centers. They're centers, where they ship things from.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
managed the IT in three of those in my first job, and again, I was tinkering around on the side trying to make websites for people and things like that. Um, so just this accumulation of like learning things. Even like I got into real estate and I'm getting a real estate license before the crash of '08 and like 2006 because
great time.
yeah, well, I
Kind
wasn't
of
I was
tough.
I was still doing the IT. I just didn't
Mhm.
want to I didn't want to bother an agent when I wanted to look at property. So I'm like, I'll get my own license. And but then I got my own license and I'm like, well, I should probably sell some of it, some real estate, get some money. So I started selling, on nights and weekends. And even those little things like just they all
That's
kind of
incredibly entrepreneurial too.
yeah, they just add up and you're like, wow. You start talking to other clients and businesses and you're like, well, in real estate, you can do it this way. So maybe you could do it that way as well. And you just start everything kind of, I always say I like to collect a bunch of puzzle pieces and then figure out what I can put together later.
Yeah, and I have to say, man, going back when you were 11 and hustling lawn care, I- there's not you could go to a Sandler training and learn like sales training and all that stuff. Or you could be 11 and asking, knocking on doors and getting rejected over and over, and then sometimes winning. And I think that nothing really replaces the act of selling. And it seems like I mean, I've talked to IT providers for years because that was one of the niches in the marketing agency that we had and things like that. And I found that one of their commonalities was that they didn't love like sales. Like they were just like, why can't customers just appear in my queue? And like it seems like my impression of you so far is that you're not afraid to go hunt.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really enjoy it either, but I have to. So, I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Sullivan,
Oh yeah.
he's really big on your
No
unique
BS
ability.
marketer.
That's Dan Kennedy, but Dan Sullivan's strategic coach.
Mm. Those
Uh,
Dan's getting mixed up. I'm familiar with him
yeah,
too. He wrote something else. Was it 10x is easier than
yeah,
2x?
yeah.
Gap in the gain. All right, we're back.
But they talk about your unique ability and
Yeah.
like but then there's things you're competent at that you do a good job at that don't energize you. That's sales for me. Like I'm
Mhm.
competent at it. I could do it. I've always sold people on my ideas, in IT as a consultant. But it doesn't energize me. So,
Mm-mm.
so actually I have a sales hunter that I just hired recently. I'm getting trained up to take that over.
So I want to go back to the time period of like pre '08 with the housing crisis. So I grew up in a family that was in commercial real estate brokerage. Like my grandfather and father co-brokers, brokers of record of like a local, firm, regional. And then I just remember between mm, 2000 to like 2006, riding high. Like business was great,
Mhm.
couldn't do enough of it. And then I remember around the '08 period, it was like I told my dad, it was around the time where I was going to school. I was like, I want to do what you do. He's like, you are not freaking doing what I do. He's like, you can't make a market. Like this stuff stinks, you know.
Yeah.
And but I find that usually when one market has a crash, that other markets boom for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Um, is that something that sort of guided you to your MSP with a Built Right Hand Technology Group, or what was the overlap with, going from the UPS centers and then doing nights and weekends with real estate to, starting your own journey?
Yeah. So again, it's kind of those. So I started out at UPS. I guess I'll give you a little more of the origin story. But yeah, started out at UPS. I mean, I got out of school when I was 19. Well, I got, graduated from high school at 17. Went to a 2-year school. I just all planned out. I'm an analytical guy, so I just all planned out. Like I'm gonna go to 2-year school, come out, start working, go back for a bachelor's. But then when I'm done with the bachelor's, I'll have bachelor's plus the experience because like every job back then wanted like experience that you couldn't even possibly get because like the technology is like 2 years old and they want you to have 10 years experience. So um so I got out, was working for UPS and I'm like most entrepreneurs, I'm impatient. So I'm like, all right, I want to go to the next level. I want to go next level. So I started getting certifications and then moved to North Carolina, got a job with Computer Associates. And this was like right before the dot-com bubble burst. And we weren't doing anything. It was like a made like Office Space. You ever see the movie Office Space?
Yeah, has anyone seen my stapler?
Yeah. Well, that's literally what it was like
Like,
during
what do you do
dot-com bubble.
here? Yeah.
That's what it was like during dot-com bubble. Like there was nobody doing anything. And we're all making good money. They're sending you on trips, all this stuff, and you're like, and I'm like, again, but we also when you're an entrepreneur, you can't stand not being busy.
Being
So I was
bored is a seventh layer of hell.
Yeah. So I was like going crazy. So I ended up finding a job with Nortel Networks, which was a pretty big company back then, and moved to Raleigh. This was
Mm.
all within like, 2 years. And then I moved to Raleigh. My wife and I had our son, um, and he was like 6 months old. Nortel, well, dot-com bubble burst. Nortel started laying off like 10,000 people at a time. Just
Oh,
I just bought I had my first house for three months. I was 22 years old, and I was like, well, again, I'm an analytical guy. I'm like, everybody's getting laid off. There's not gonna
yeah.
be any jobs here. I'm putting it up for rent. I turned in my first rental property, which I wanted to get in the rental properties. So I turned in my first one. I moved back to Pittsburgh, pounded hammers for my dad because again, I can't. I was on unemployment between Computer Associates and Nortel because they like a whole department go.
Hmm.
I couldn't stand it. So I was like, I'm not collecting unemployment. I'm just gonna go pound hammers for my dad. And
No
and then I
way.
yeah, and then I got a job with this small IT company in Pittsburgh
Yeah.
um, that supported small businesses, and it was just like such a different thing working directly with small businesses, having an
Versus these
impact.
giant companies that are,
Yeah, yeah. So it's like just loved it, but the problem always is like I always felt like I had better ways to do things and better ideas. So it was like eventually you're like, I gotta go off on my own and try this. So 2000, I was there from 2001 to 2007, and that's when I left to start another kind of story, but started my own company. Had a kind of a whale of a client, anchor client to kind of get started.
Hmm.
Um, but like you're talking about, I'm an IT guy. I'm like, I'm not a salesman. How am I going to sell? How am I going to grow? I got this big client that takes up most of my time. So I merged with another company that I worked with a lot at my client. And so they
Okay.
acquired me. They acquired me and I started up the managed service division for them. And they were supposed to do the sales. Uh, Long story short, it's about 6 years later, all the sales came from referrals from my clients. And then I was just like, well, I can keep complaining about this, or I can.
Make a change.
Yeah. So I started Right Hand Technology Group at the time, started networking, doing all the stuff I always tried avoiding, and just built it one client at a time. And all those clients that I had, eventually, as their contracts came up, came over, um,
Mm.
and that's kind of history. Been doing it for since 2014 now.
Man, I love that. I love the story, how it's just your story is so evident. The theory that the best salesperson for your business is as a happy client, and the best way to get new business is that which is on your desk. And your story proves that point, but also, you weren't afraid to take risks. Where a lot of people, I think there's three things people can do when they're in that situation. They can either complain about it and do nothing and then just be miserable. They can accept it and then just like, push those emotions deep down inside, or they can make a change.
Yeah.
So I think only the third one is really healthy, but
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, I'll give, I guess, talking about being married for 20 years this year, I'll give credit to my wife because I think like if you don't have the right spouse, that could really cause a problems. Like she just always let me do whatever I wanted. So, yeah, every time I come up with an idea, grant, but I always say I had to earn that trust. Like I had to prove that whatever I said, I would follow through on. So, but it's
it's kind of a
such a,
superpower though, having a partner that like trusts you enough and believes in you. I think if a lot of guys are being totally honest, that's what they would want in a partner, is like someone that's
yeah,
like down to, ride and doesn't jump off the ship as soon as it starts to get a little rocky.
yeah. I remember, I like bought this one house. I was like, I sent my wife a text message. I'm like, hey, I just bought this house in your name, just so you know. She's like, okay. I think most people would be like, most wives are like, what you do what?
Yeah, hold the brakes, pump the brakes here. What'd you say? Um, so in terms of real estate investing, is that something you're still focused on, or are you just like, do you gradually just build a portfolio over time? And do you like, what's your views on real estate investing? I'm curious.
Yeah, I guess I've been doing it since I turned my first house into a rental. And then me, my dad and I bought created a partnership, bought a bunch of rentals, again, kind of pre-crash. But we did, like idiots, we we bought cheap places in bad areas, which looks really good on paper until you don't get the rent and they tear up the house and all those type of things.
Yeah,
So when I started right hand, I was like, we got to get rid of these. So we sold them all. Um,
nice.
and then a couple years later, I started kind of just gradually building them back. I don't. I guess I'm getting kind of to the point I really don't want the headaches. So like I'm trying to like buy them more intelligently, buy them in like the building I'm in right now. I bought this last year and we're rehabbing the whole building. Um, and then so I just buy when it makes sense. And I have a property manager now, which didn't have previously.
I was going to say,
Uh,
people think that being a owner operator of investment properties is passive income, and you learned that the only thing passive about it is sometimes you collect checks in the mailbox.
yeah,
But if you have a property management company, then it's more like organizational leadership, making sure that you have delegated a lot of the stuff, they do what they're supposed to do.
yeah, and it's like I said, it's still never passive. Like I'm sure, obviously, if you buy a REIT or something like that, it's passive, but it's also not as uh
Returns
not
aren't there.
yeah. But even the property manager, you get texts or emails or calls or something's going on, and they don't
Yeah,
really make decisions. I mean, which I don't blame them. I don't want, we always say we don't make decisions for our clients. It's their business. But
that's a good quote.
so they're not gonna make decisions. So you're still getting the like you're in the middle of working, doing doing your business, and then you get a something this, this basement's flooding or something. You're like, oh man, why do I do this to myself?
So, um, that leads me to questions about right hand. So you had essentially 13 years ish of MSP where you weren't like the founder, and you worked with from large companies like UPS and then small mom and pop Main Street type companies. Um, what was it like in the beginning for right hand? Like how that was after the real estate crash, and
Mhm.
you have two kids at the time, wife that's completely like, all right, we're doing a new thing, no objections. You got the support at home. But what was like your mindset when you made that jump? I love asking people that question because there's some people that are like, it was the scariest thing in my life. And I wish I would have done it sooner. Or some people are like, oh, it was the easiest thing I've ever did. And it was the exact right time. So it's like a wide variety of responses. I'm really curious where your head was at.
Yeah, so like I said, I kind of merged with that the one company, and they were supposed to do sales, and I'm a very strategic. Again, I'm really analytical. I'm like an engineer, so I'm like always trying to build. I'm not like just leaping out of the plane. I got a game plan of, got my parachute ready. I got it all set up, and I know it's going to work. I've tested it, whatever it might be. Um, so I,
Mhm.
talked to the owner of the company, was just like, hey, things have to change. We need to get some sales. We need to get a salesperson in here. We need to do the, X, Y, and Z. And if, basically if it doesn't happen in the next 6 months, um, I'm gonna go on my own. And so that 6 months was my window to start building. Had it worked out, like, I just had a network that I built out and maybe some clients to bring to that company, but it didn't, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So for 6 months, I was getting things ready.
Man,
It was tough.
that's a
It's
six
still,
months notice though. Like that, I've never heard of a 6 month notice.
yeah, well,
You're
it's a
not
small
kidding.
business. It was like small, it's a small group of people.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and I had a good relationship with, well, at the time I did. Wasn't too happy when I left, but must thought I
Yeah.
was joking. Um, but yeah, so it was just like, hey, I mean, I tried to explain to him because he tried selling it out from under me when I was leaving. But
That's
well,
wild. We
I
don't have
was
to go in
explaining to
any
him, I
we
was
don't have
like,
to go any weedy territory, but that's crazy.
yeah, I was like, well, uh, you realize I built the value here. Like, so when I walk out, the value walks with me. And
Yeah, your business is key man dependent and you're not the key man.
yeah, so that was kind of I didn't want to have to do that. I'm usually a pretty easygoing guy, but at some point, like I said, you got to stop complaining and you got to
Yeah.
take the next step. So, but the interesting thing is like I went from, having a pretty nice income, six figure income, to like having like one client in that, or no, what was there? Yeah, it was two clients in that 6 month period that like basically covered about 25% of my my income at the time. So, like,
People always judge by the end result. I find in
yeah,
business, they're like, "Oh, it must be so nice. You have right hand tech. You guys are crushing it." And you're like, "Yeah, but the first year was brutal."
yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. You think, I mean, I'm sure it's probably or you wouldn't do it, but every entrepreneur, you're like, okay, this is probably going to be the way it plays out. And then you kind of wait, like, what's the worst case? And for me in IT, I mean, in IT and cybersecurity, it's like worst case is I go get another job. So,
Right.
but,
Yeah, it takes the
like,
fear out of it takes the emotional fear out of it. Like I love the quote that anxiety is a mile wide, but like an inch deep. It's like once you take the
yeah,
first step, then you're like, oh, there's some ground underneath there, solid footing.
yeah, yeah. And, again, my wife, she's just kind of used to like always figure out a way so she doesn't get all freaked out about things like losing 75% of your income. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting too. Like my experience, I did not give a 6 month when I was a partner in the prior life firm. Um, but I did get some runway. Like I got, made an exit, sold out my equity, and that first 6 months, man, I will tell you, every other day and every day I was like, what the hell did I do? Because I went from making a comfortable, like you said, comfortable income that could support the family and everyone was happy and doing great
Hmm.
things. And then I was like, well, after this runway is over, I don't know, better get hustling and make something happen because this clock is ticking. And I remember I had 6 months runway planned out, like dedicated. And on the first week of month 7, I landed like a big fish client that put me back.
Hmm.
But I was like, it couldn't have been more divine intervention of just like almost like a test from God. Like, do you have the patience and the fortitude to handle like bad times?
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that, 2+ years later, I do, but at the time, so kudos to you and your wife for doing that. And how long have you been doing right hand tech now? How many years since that period?
That's our 11th year, 2014.
I think it's like 90% of businesses don't make it past, or 80% don't make it past year 5.
Yeah, and then I think another 80 or 90% of the next whoever's left doesn't make it past 10. So,
What do you think are some of the reasons you have made it as long as you have?
well, like I said, I'm pretty strategic, so I think I take calculated risks. I'm not a gambler, you know.
Hmm.
So for me, it's like I always look at like what's it, whether I'm doing real estate or whatever. It's like what's the worst case, and then can I handle that worst case? Can I is that worst case gonna totally ruin me, or is it like okay, well we can do you know B and C and we'll be back, So, um, I bought a 2018, I believe. I bought this 12-unit apartment building that was like, I mean, it was really bad. It's like it was. I always tell people like my wife and I were down there looking one day, and there was like 12 units, and there was like people in like opposite corners of the building, and 10 units were vacant. And the one person in the top
What?
corner flushed the toilet, and water came down. It was disgusting. Water came down like in the apartment while we were
It
standing in
does
there.
roll downhill.
Yeah. So, but again, I just like analyzed numbers, and I was just like, worst case that happens is I lose this money, but again, I guess a stream of income with my business, with my skills, and we'll be fine. So, um, yeah, we did it. We rehabbed the entire place. I still have it. It's right by a university, so it's like always full. Again, you learn. You're like, that was like scary. You're like, holy moly, this is a big project. Then you're done. You're like I said, people see you after the fact, and then all of a sudden it's just like, and the funny thing is that people will talk to you about they're trying to get their first little rental property, and just like, come on, dude, it's not that difficult. Just do it.
Yeah, you can say that because you've earned the stripes. Say that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man, quick story about that is I my first time completely making the leap from no longer being like an employee, 2019, we had our thesis for the investment group was to do multifamily unit syndications doing the
Mhm.
Burr method. And I got my real estate license. I finally, with like 10 years of corporate experience ish, my my grandfather was not even retired. At 93, he let his real estate license lapse. He's 95, thinking he wants to get it back. Right. So
Yeah.
that's like how I grew up. I try to be a lot like him. And my first ever deal was 218 units under contract. And I actually
Wow.
wrote a LinkedIn post about this because it was 5 years ago. Like exactly. And the timing of that. So we had this like agreement of sale, and I was like, that's a great first deal. I don't think many people went from 0 to 218.
Nah.
And then COVID happened on the Monday. We get back, and in Pennsylvania, I'm sure like it's the only state where it was deemed non-essential. That deal fell through. Did consulting. I had 10 clients. They all either shut their doors or they
Yeah.
completely cut off expenses that were not essential, like marketing. So I went from like 100 to 0 in over a weekend. And I always think back to that kind of stuff, and I'm like, well, 5 years later, I'm still doing okay. So, like you
Yeah.
said, it's just like what the nice thing about it is You don't have to do everything in one day. The other nice thing about it is when you have enough days behind you, it kind of I think that's how you build confidence. Like you stack wins.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's I, tell my kids like, you don't just like get confidence. Like you have to like get out of your comfort zone, try something, be successful. I mean, it's like weightlifting, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if everything's comfortable, you're not going to get any muscles or get,
Yeah.
build your strength or anything. You gotta put stress on yourself. But so many people think you're going to get the confidence first and then go out and do the thing. And it's like,
No,
yeah,
I hate the term fake it till you make it. I like show up till you grow up.
yeah, yeah.
It's like it
That's funny.
applies to lifting.
I always say sign up, show up, and do the work.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
Um, I had someone talking before about podcasting. They're like, "Oh wow, you're like a natural," and I'm like, "Yeah, I've done it 300 times. If you don't think I'm a natural, then I suck." Like,
yeah,
I probably should have given up 200 episodes ago.
yeah.
Um, so you've won some awards for right hand tech. What is like? How does that work? I've worked with a bunch of MSPs before, and from a marketer's perspective, you also mentioned before that when you were doing IT, you were also building websites. And I'm like, that's so interesting because around the dot-com bubble era, a lot of IT and like digital marketing agencies that was like synonymous with one another. Like there were people in that age band that were like, oh, you're my IT guy. Go do my SEO and fix this technical issue and fix my
Yeah.
computer. Like that has nothing to do with SEO. What the hell are you talking about? But you got into that level where it did. So what made you like if you were building websites, people, what made you go to cybersecurity and AI versus like marketing? How'd that work?
Well, I mean, I always just say I'm an IT nerd at heart. I just love technology. So like,
Mm,
I'm like, I've been a CISSP, which is like a cybersecurity certificate. It's kind of like if you're gonna read a cybersecurity book, the author better be a CISSP.
hmm
I've had that since 2014. I've been doing cybersecurity. Well, I think I wrote an article back in like early 2000s for the Pittsburgh Business Times about cybersecurity. They got it published, and so I've been doing it a long time, but I just love IT. So like when AI started, I just can't, I'm just like all over it, and especially the automation side of it. So like I always say AI is great, but automating AI is like really what makes it awesome.
yeah, yeah.
So like I just did a short video this morning on LinkedIn, just kind of showing building a quick app um, for like SEO. But um,
Do you use N8N make or do you something else?
I use Make. We're using something called Hats AI for like small businesses because it's like built for security. It's not going to have all the like constant new innovations, but they're basically a platform for MSPs to come into small businesses and give them chat, give them all the different platforms. I'm sure you've seen other platforms like this, but
Mhm.
you have access to all the models. You can build out apps, so it's like a user can just input things and then the prompt and everything's behind it. So um, and it's kind of made for cybersecurity so that like you're not um, like I always say, like if you don't put a policy in place and then restrict the AI tools your people are using, your data is going to be all over the place.
So you're not
But
suggesting DeepSeek to anyone and everyone.
yeah, but you got to give them the tools, or they're gonna go on their own, right? That's why I used to
Mm,
have rogue IT. I'm sure you heard of the term rogue IT. Like people just go out and find their own tools. Like so, you got to provide them the tools. So like
mm.
something like Hats AI is a nice platform. Like I said, they're a small company, so they're not keeping up with the like I said DeepSeek, or I don't know if you saw Manus this week, which was like uh really wild. Um,
No,
so
I
you're
want
not
to hear
gonna.
about it.
Oh,
I
you
haven't
haven't
yet
seen
read about it.
Manus?
Not
Manus.
yet. You said it was this week, so usually I'm
Yeah,
like a week behind, but I want to
yeah.
talk about the bleeding edge.
Well, luckily, when you start looking at this stuff, the algorithms just like keep feeding you. So like, I don't even have to like try to look at the stuff. It's just popping up on my feeds all the time. But no, it's like agentic AI, and it just like I was watching this one marketing guy using it, and he was just like, he just basically went in and typed create me a website and put his name in for about and then put his name in it, and it built. I mean, it went off and did all these different things, built a really nice website, like not some piece of crap
Yeah.
and then posted it. You just clicked on a link and it brought it up. I mean, it was like really nice looking website. Um, and then, then he just said, okay, give me all the HTML files so I can host it on such and such. And it just zipped them up, gave them to him. And he had some other things he was doing too. Like I want to, plan my trip to Japan for April, and it like went out, did all kind of research on Japan in April, and like put together his whole plan. And it's check it out. Check out Manus. I mean, it was all over.
I'm so excited. I actually got an email earlier that was absolutely an AI outreach. And it's usually pretty simple. It's like, hi, first name. I'm intrigued by your experience in company name.
Mhm.
Like that's not too hard to figure out. A lot of people are doing it. This one was like, hey, I noticed you named your company after your daughter. That's really cool. And I was like, how the hell did you know that? That's not on my LinkedIn profile. It's not on my website. Like it's not like a service level scrape. So to your point, like this last week, it's like seems like it's the exponential age of AI. It's not
Yeah.
linear. It's like hockey sticking.
Yeah. And I don't know who said it, but you know, I always think it every time something comes out is like, this is the worst it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
It's like as impressive as it is. It's like, this is the worst. Right now is the worst it's ever going to be. So it's like, yeah, it's crazy. I also, the thing I've been saying lately to people, because, even some of my employees get nervous, and I'm like, listen, like if you're in a huge company, like we're talking about the UPSs,
Hmm.
the big banks and stuff, they're definitely going to let people go, and replace them with AI. But if you're a small business, you're probably not going to let the people go. You're just going to be able to do so much more that you weren't able to do before.
Hmm.
That's going to be the game changer. Is like you'll still have the same amount of people, but you'll be able to do twice as much, if not more, than you were before. So, it's good. It's good to be a small business with AI.
I love that take. A lot of people are afraid that it's going to just widen the gap that kind of COVID started expediting between Wall Street and Main Street. And I'm like, well, if you're savvy and flexible and agile and you have a plan,
Yeah,
you can just amplify your value exponentially versus when you have lots of red tape and moving variables. You can't make a 90-degree turn on the Titanic without it tipping over, but like if you have a dinghy or like a speedboat, you sure can.
yeah. I mean, it's. I think it's going to though. Like you said, I think the disparity. Because I just look at even in my industry. I'm in a managed service business, and like we're all IT people, and I'll be on calls and I'll be talking to people, and nobody's really like. I mean, there's some people here and there, but like most people aren't really into it that much. It's just like, what is going on? Like you realize that because I could see a time where your computer fixes itself, right? Like if you already have Copilot PCs and everything, and we monitor people's computers and stuff to try to proactively stop things. Why can't the computer just do that itself, like
Mm.
and troubleshoot itself? So you're probably not going to need help desk. You'll be able to talk to your computer and say, what's going on, and it'll. Yeah, I do it with some of my engineers. I built out an automation or a ticketing system that like kicks the ticket notes over to Perplexity, tells it to basically put together troubleshooting steps, sends it back, and then it's just like tells you what to do, and like
I
multiple things
mean,
that,
that's such a crazy take, but it's so true that it could just, hey, go fix yourself. Okay. It's programmed to make you happy, fulfill your prompt. I I have a talking about how small businesses um have a competitive advantage. I distinctly remember 10 plus years ago, I had a role in a company with marketing that was super predicated around outreach for UGC. Be like, hey, we have this huge resource. We think it'll be great if you can add this information to your website. Could you please just link back to our thing? And I had to do that over and over and over to try and win backlinks, right? An
hmm
SEO thing. And now I remember I was getting paid a salary, like, and I was working 60 hours a week, like at a startup. Like, I was busting my butt.
hmm
And I can do the exact same thing, and I do the exact same thing for myself and clients for, I don't know, like 1/40th the cost ish. And I can do it as if I was 15 people. And I'm like, that job that I did 10 years ago will never, should not exist. If it does exist now, that's probably bad.
yeah,
And that leads me to another point that you made. It's like there's this disparity between um people that do business to arrive at a destination or to become successful. And once they've made enough money or their business is stable, they just want to plateau. Like intentionally, they don't want to have they don't want to play the games insofar as to continue to evolve and grow.
Yeah.
And unless they're acted upon by outside force, then the feeling is like, oh crap, I better do something now.
Yeah.
Whereas I think people that are wired more like you, and hopefully also like me, are playing the game because my baseline is discontent. Whereas like if I'm not like playing to win, I just have no patience for this at all. I just want to win or play the game well rather, because
Yeah.
failure is part of it so badly that like I can't ignore any competitive advantage or else I'm just going to get like cooked or swept.
Hmm.
And I guess my point in bringing that up is you mentioned that there are people out there in the industry that like aren't interested in AI. And I'm like, that's probably great for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's same with cybersecurity and compliance because it's like, these are what AI is going to do is make the lower, I want to say lower skill, but like the less difficult things they'll be replaced by AI. It's the strategic, the like cybersecurity, like isn't going to go away with AI because you're going to use AI to help you, but like you still got to manage cybersecurity and like high level consulting for businesses on how to use AI. Like that's that's going to increase. Like so, like there's things that like you aren't going to go away that you need to be moving towards. Honestly, I think in our industry, I don't know if you ever heard of ConnectWise, but
Mhm.
the CEO of ConnectWise, I remember being at one of their events, like, and this was probably 7 years ago, and he was just saying, guys, the the tier one help desk stuff, the like break fix stuff, that's gonna go away. Like you need to be at the higher level, the strategic advisor consulting, or you're gonna get wiped out.
Mm.
I don't know if he thought it was gonna take this long, but like again, I think AI is gonna definitely do that. Um, I mean, how easy is it gonna be? I mean, I don't know if you ever used ChatGPT's like phone app where you can talk to it and stuff.
Mhm.
I'll just be driving and I'm like, I got to prepare for a sales call or something. I'll just sit there and like talk to talk to ChatGPT and like help me prepare for the meeting. Um, just act like you're the prospect. Here's the deal, blah 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 blah, and and it'll just sit there and keep going back and forth with you. So I don't know. It's unfortunately some people, like you said, want to just like they want to freeze in time, and
It,
that's not gonna
it's
work.
from a marketing perspective, it's like when the dot-com bubble started and it was like, you know, people were like, I'm just going to keep doing my newspaper ad. That's the only advertising I'm going to do. Newspapers work for me
Mhm.
all the time. I like my rep. Like, why would I need to do a website? And then it's like, oh, well, if you don't have a website, then you lose market share very quickly, especially
Mhm.
nowadays. And, there's still a large subsection of the population that likes to go to retail stores and shops. That's great. But like e-commerce now, I believe is 25% of retail. And I'm sure in the dot-com bubble, it was like less than five. So it does take time, but like really rewards early adopters, I think, for those that take the calculated risk. And you mentioned something in your story earlier about how you got laid off and you just picked up a hammer to work with your dad. It's like you're not afraid to use the tools that you need to use at the time that are available. That could be a hammer, that could be AI. But like whatever the tool is to accomplish the goal, like why not use it? I think I
Yeah.
made that observation. I don't know if you think it's accurate.
Yeah, I think it's accurate. I'm not good at shutting off. You're talking about, you know, people are, some people just, like you get to a certain point and you kind of just want to stop and maybe, have that lifestyle business. I'm not good at that. Like, I'm always like, what's the next thing? I think I mentioned in some of my notes, like, I'm just not ever content. Luckily, I kind of realize that's just natural.
Mm.
So, but like I'm never happy. So like I always know I'm gonna keep pushing forward, keep wanting to do the next thing, keep wanting to learn the next thing. And like I'm not good at like shutting off. So like I could have came back and collected unemployment, but it was just like, oh, dude, I can't sit in the house all day. I'll go crazy. So I was just like, my dad, had a contracting business, and I worked for him in high school. Put on roofs and all kind. Learned some backbreaking work. It was just like, oh, I'll go do that. It's funny because again, Office Space. I don't know if you remember the end where he's like a construction worker.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he's like all pumped up that he's outside. I used to think about that when I was out there on the roofs for about a week. Like, man, this is really nice being outside. And then about 2 weeks, and I'm like, man, this is it's too hot out here.
And that's another industry that won't get is like disrupted by AI. I think that like there'll be some of this, I'm sure, with AI, but it can't build you a house. It can't fix your toilet that's running down the side of your 18 unit, you know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the AI with the robots at some
Not
point might.
yet, I guess. Not
Yeah.
yet. Maybe someday.
I don't know if you
So,
ever read the book Physics of the Future by Michio Kaku.
mm,
Uh, it, he kind of predicts a lot of things, but he talks about nanobots being able to build things and like all kinds of stuff. So it's a pretty good book if you want to like kind of see where things are heading. I'm not even sure he was aggressive enough in some of his thinking, but yeah,
I had a weird college experience where I was a philosophy major and be like, oh, what are you gonna do with that? Well, I just studied whatever I thought was interesting at the time, and AI was, this was I'm dating myself a couple decades ago, whatever. But there's a book called Kill Decision that came out, and it was about drones being used in warfare. And at that time, people weren't even like like residential drones weren't a thing,
yeah,
and like the college bought a drone, like kind of worked. And like, this is crazy.
yeah,
And this book was all about how the future of warfare was to be drones. Now, if you see anything about the Ukraine-Russia war, you're like, oh wow, like there's just people that are literally that book exists now, and it's like 2 decades later. And I think
yeah,
that's going to be the nature of AI, but maybe just faster time horizon. And same with Ray
yeah,
Kurzweil, if you're familiar with Ray,
yeah,
huge futurist. And I mean, as it pertains to business, I think the helpful takeaway is like, yeah, be strategic, analytical, think about the future, but like also pivot when it's today and you need to solve today problems, like use the tools available. I think that's sort of like one of the themes that we've discussed and could
yeah.
carry
And I
over.
mean, I think a lot of these tools, and I think I'm getting better at it, but I've kind of also, you start looking at AI and and I've had conversations with people about this too, like trying to talk to them about AI. You want to go to like automating like an entire like function instead of just like taking care of one little piece of that function that you do over and over and over, and then moving on to the next little piece and the next little piece. And before you know it, over a period of time, you've automated that function. But like trying to jump straight to like, I want to replace this whole thing here. Um, you got to start off with just those little pieces,
A
and they
hundred
add up.
golden BB is not one silver bullet. And I think that's the thing. I have a buddy that is actually, he owns a managed IT service company and he's a real estate investor local. So you guys have that in common. But he sent me a message one time. He's like, have you heard of ChatGPT? I was like, yeah, I've been using it for a year. Why? He's like, I told it to write me a blog post and it did. And I was like, that was that the whole prompt conversation? He's like, yeah. And I was like, it probably is crap. Like it is probably
Yeah,
so bad,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And to your point, like if I were to say to him, hey, I've got like 3 concurrent agents that are doing separate functions in N8N between researching and between copywriting and proofing and publishing and posting and whatever to write the
Hmm.
same blog. And I've like, let's just say, so 3 agents doing different things in part of the process with all these connectivities to Notion and Airtable and, your WordPress and whatever. Yeah. You know how that whole game works.
Yeah,
He'd be like, huh? Why would you do that? Why don't you just ask ChatGPT? It's like that's
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I do it. So I do it like all the time now. So like I'm doing webinars and stuff, and then I want to create kind of shorts, kind of like you do with the podcast, and so I basically build out this automation where I'm using an app to splice it up, and then I take the shorts, I put them in. Actually, I put them in Canva because I kind of like put a beginner and an end on it. And I move it to a folder in Canva, and then make.com grabs it, puts it in an Airtable database, sends it over to ChatGPT Whisper to get the transcript out of it, takes the transcript and basically creates social media posts for all the different social media platforms for the short, and then basically sends it back to me like, does this look good?
Chat clip that. I want to. That is such a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. Like it's a different like people can use publicly available software tools like Opus or Spike, and I'm not trying to endorse them, whatever,
Mhm.
to take away 80% of the manual editing to do what we're doing, like creating content, clipping it, distributing. But like you just took that process and 10x'd it by saying, oh, look, if you make these AI agents that can do transcription reading and then doing the posting for you, it's just like
Yeah.
that's
I just started off, went through the process myself, and then I got my son actually working for me part time, doing some of the marketing stuff, assistant stuff, like stuff I built out, and just kind of instead of me going and clicking things, he does it. So I was like, I created a video showing him how to do it, and I'm like, oh, I bet you I can automate that. So I just started like piece by piece, and then you kind of put all the pieces together. Um, yeah, like you said, I have stuff for blogs, social media posts. I mean, I get into I created this automation. So we're an IT company, right? So we do help desk support and stuff, and then we send out when we close a ticket, we send out like the smiley faces, like, are you happy, not
yep,
happy?
yep.
And if they click happy, it basically was gonna kick off an automation to grab all the ticket details, and then through a few steps, it basically writes a review for them, and then it sends back and says, hey, give us a Google review. We'll give you a $25 Starbucks card. By the way, here's a AI generated review based on your ticket if you just want to copy and paste it. And just emails it to them. I don't even have to do anything. All they do is they click the happy smiley face, and the whole thing kicks off. Um, the only thing I have to do manually right now is if they respond back, well, they have to send back a screenshot of it to get the gift card,
Yeah, for proof. Yeah.
and at that point, I have to take the email, send them a gift card, and then I got to go in their table and mark it as like they've done it, or that way it doesn't keep sending them every time they do it.
I think you'll be able to get an automation for that someday too. Maybe not tomorrow, but someday.
Yeah, I need an API for Starbucks.
Um, have you used Appify?
No, I've heard of it, but I haven't used it.
I would, if you're gonna looking for an API for Starbucks, I would say that might be a good place to look.
Yeah.
They
Well,
got it's like
I gotta get overwhelmed with the even when you set this out, I still get like a ton of well,
yeah.
number one, you don't get a ton of people that just give you the initial like click a smiley face on tickets, and then those people they get the email back, and then very small number of those actually respond back. So it's not enough time for me to just
The
justify the
time to
effort.
make the automation outweighs the time to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
have done automations like that just because I'm a nerd, but
Um, one of the questions if I had to guess, I think I know the answer, but like if you're anything like me, happy keeping a happy marriage is understanding, there's a time and a place for everything, for together time, for alone time, whatever, whatever. And like sometimes my wife will want to watch like some scary romance murder mystery thriller that I just can't get into. So I'll come
yeah,
in and that's when I start playing around with the automations and YouTube Academy and school.com. Always like places to learn about it. And she's happy and I'm happy. But like what are some of the keys to success in a happy marriage? That's, as much as it's difficult to have your own business for 11 years, it's probably equal to or like more difficult than having a 20-year marriage to the same person.
yeah. I mean, we've been together for 25 years, so I mean, I think some of it's luck, right? Picking the right person, and then I always say that like we banged our heads together so many times, we kind of melded them together. But for me, especially being very task oriented, and she's the opposite. She's like very people oriented. I'm very task oriented. And for me, I got to create rituals. So like,
Mhm.
I'm a morning guy. I have my morning rituals. I have like if I can get it into a habit, I know I can accomplish whatever it is, right? Just turn it into a habit and boom, I'm gonna achieve it. So that's the same thing with I try to do in my marriage. Like, okay, I gotta I gotta, um, basically set a monthly date night. I gotta set, I know some people say weekly. It sounds like a lot to me,
That's
but
a lot.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got my weekly date night with my, I'm like, what, really? I mean, we're together every night. We have dinner together. We watch a show
Like
together or whatever.
I'll watch a show with you, but like,
Yeah.
you really want to go out? Like,
Yeah. So
what's wrong with you?
try to do it once a month and, um, just do cool stuff. Like, I just bought tickets for the Screw Tape Letters coming in July, which we've seen before, but like she likes musicals and stuff. And I don't think I like them, but then I'm like, it's pretty good,
Yeah,
So,
it's not that painful, it's
yeah,
all right. Yeah.
concerts, stuff like that. Just try to come up with so every quarter, try to come up with something, something a little unique, going to a show, going to a concert, going to a comedian, things like that. Um, yeah, that's it.
It
And
sounds like in business and in life, the term heuristics comes up in logic, where it's like, hey, we've run these problems before. Here's a neural pathway that I can rely on that can solve for it. Whether it's like, hey, this is a date night idea ritual, or this is like an automation I can build. Like you've just
yeah,
done so many things where you have like enough experience that you can fall back on whether it's rituals or automations, but they're kind of like they accomplish the same thing.
yeah, for sure. And then I mean, again, I don't know what your situation is, but like, with me and my wife, we met when I was just a little bit shy of 21 and she was like 19. So we've been together a long time and it's just like, as I'm older, I wouldn't say it's always been like this, but as I'm older, I'm just like, you just feel like you grew up together. Like it's just like, wow, we were like kids basically, and now we're getting older. So it's like, I don't know, you just kind of appreciate that. Like, wow, she's been there for a long time, put up with my crap for a long time,
Oh yeah.
which as an entrepreneur, um, you're putting through a lot of crap. And like I said, she's always just kind of, um, always just let me do what I want, not try to stop me. So
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing, both for relationships and in business. It's really tough if your sample size of what you're analyzing is like the argument you had yesterday, or like the time that she didn't put away the dishes the right time the week ago, or some like, there's a couple of small things that if you look in a short window of reflection, you're like, oh man, like this is really grinding my gears. But then
yeah.
as soon as you look at a larger window of time, you're like, that's insignificant as heck.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of good stuff in there, and you just like can get a lot more of a smooth curve of growth versus like that sharp up and down. And I think the hardest part for me with entrepreneurship for sure was like living in the moment. Like when you're so focused on the moment, you're like, oh my God, this pain will never end. And you're like, it ended.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm so happy. This is never gonna end. And like then it ended. So getting that wide sample size of data, I think and tactically, my advice to anyone listening is if your wife is mad at you and thinks that you did something that was wrong, because like for me, I will forget things often. Like I'm not the
Mhm.
most like attentive when it comes to remembering to like flip the laundry. I'll just pull up a picture when my daughter was a newborn and she's like, "Oh, it's so adorable." I'm like, "Look at that. Great memories. We made some good memories." You
Yeah.
know?
And I think just knowing, I guess again, as you get older, I think it's a little bit easier, but like just giving each other grace that like I know it's she's again, we've taken disc profiles like and shared them with each other. Like I know she's very people oriented, not very task oriented. So like getting upset about like if the house isn't perfect, which I did when I was younger, like, well, you're supposed to be taking care of, because she's always stayed at home. It's like, well, you're supposed to take care of all this stuff, and it's like she's a people person. She's not very task oriented. Like, and she's done a good job, but it's just like back then I was like, well, this I should come home and this should just be done.
Yeah, it used to
And
frustrate you. Now you're like, well, it's just mildly painful.
yeah, and then for me, I'm very task oriented and like very analytical, not so much people oriented. And it's just like she knows that. So like she doesn't expect me to be that some other way. And I know how she is. I don't really expect her to be some other way. Again, not to say I'm perfect and she's perfect and we just like never argue or anything, but like I just think as you start giving each other some like grace for your differences really helps.
Yeah, I think those psychometric things that people do for, recruiters will do, or executive searches will do. Like, hey, check out what's your Colby index, whatever. It's great for
Hmm.
business, but it's probably better for home. Like it's equally because I think that relationship is really important. And sometimes my wife, who does sales, and I do marketing, but also management.
Hmm.
She's like so talked out from being in person all day. Like just like I'm talking to accomplish the thing, which is like helping
Hmm.
you buy a car or not. And I just like do podcasts and as a marketer, I think I'm a more of a storyteller and I'm like, here's all the information. And she's just like, you lost me after the first three sentences.
Yeah.
And like understanding that that's what we do all day, I gotta be more of a salesperson when I talk to her. It's like, and she needs to maybe, let me just talk myself until I'm done. She's like, are you done? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, now we're gonna talk about this.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to what you mentioned, but I hope that anyone listening um, can take some of these tidbits and be like, oh, this is a heuristic to help me with my own relationship. So
Yeah. Yeah. Especially younger people, because um, I know, when I was younger, I think we were always committed, which I think was a big thing, just committing, like, come hell or high water, we're going to make this work. Um, but yeah, I think people give up too easy. There's a lot of times I probably wanted to. Uh, Obviously now at this point, I'm like, man, I'm so glad I never did.
yeah, I think that applies to business too. And the last point I'll make about that is so much of success, I think, is just showing up every day. You're
Hmm.
doing something every day. I mean, you don't have to work 12 hours on Saturday, 12 hours on Sunday, and 16 Monday through Friday. That's not who you are. But like, I'll spend 4 hours over the weekend at minimum just to
Hmm.
make sure I'm good for the week. And I think that's more than a lot of people. And
Yeah.
same with your relationship. Just like show up every day.
Yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, like basically what I was just saying, the same thing applies to business. Like I just was committed. I'm gonna make this work, come hell or high water. And I think when you make that commit, if what do they say, burn the ships or burn the bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Burn the
if you
ships.
yeah, if you're not gonna burn the ships, then you're gonna probably go back to the ships before it's right. Like you were saying, month 7 or whatever, you got that big client. Like if you didn't burn the ships, you might have went back to the ship on month 6 and said, didn't work. I'm out of
Dude.
here.
And then on month 12, I got recruited for a job and I was getting pressure from people I won't mention, just get a job because that
Mm,
client, the contract was up. Like then it was over. And I got the offer and I was never more depressed than when I got the offer. I went back in my car and I just like sat in my car for like 15 minutes in the middle of the summer without the AC on, just sweating. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Why would I even consider taking this? And then like that was the last time, like that moment, I was like, well, there's the ship. I can get out, and then I'll probably regret
yeah.
it for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jason, it's been a pleasure hearing about your story. I can ask you a bunch more questions. I think I think we've really jammed on some deeply profound and like helpful for life, not just business, but business and relationships in life. Last question I have for you is not super deep. It's where can people find you? How can people learn more about what you got going on and connect?
Yeah. I enjoyed it too. This I flew by. This is fun. Wish I could go have that cigar with you. I'm gonna go go have one locally here. I'll think about you. I'm taking a couple puffs, but yeah, you can find us. My company's Right Hand Technology Group, so righthandtechnologygroup.com. I'm on LinkedIn, just / Jason Vanzin. On X, we're Right Hand Tech. Also on YouTube, we're Right Hand Tech. And yeah, those are, I guess, the main places.
Awesome. And everyone listening, I don't run ads in the show. I don't plan to. The only way the show grows is if you enjoyed it and you share it with a friend. So if you felt the way I felt, please share it with a friend. Be well. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ross.